Get over here!
The champion specialization for the warrior might be defense focused, but boy is it fun to sit back and watch the world burn around you. Let's go through the best champion fire build in Dragon Age the Veilguard. Let's go! Let me know any other warrior builds you'd like. So I have been tinkering with a Slayer bleed build, but I decided to do the champion build instead because it's not as many videos about the poor old champion, and I decided to give it a little bit of love. So the main focus for this build is really perfect defense and just defense in general, but that skill. So perfect defense, by the way, is like deflecting correctly when an enemy goes to hit you. Now, the reason that's so critical for this build is because not only are we using a shield that pulls enemies toward us, but a lot of the champion traits are all revolved around actually triggering perfect defense, not only for flaming weapons, but to then gain this like reverb effect to apply burning and fire damage and all this good stuff. So it's really important that you, at the start of basically every encounter and anytime someone attacks, you perfect defend rather than dodge. But we will go through the skills that we are using. Now, I am using Grappling Spear, which is a fire skill that applies Overwhelmed. It will grab a target and pull them towards you. You always want to use this on whatever the deadliest target is. That could be a boss or an elite enemy. Pull them over towards you and then detonate that effect. Blightbane is the specific specialization ability here. This detonates weakened with like this bomb, fire bomb effect thing that does a really solid amount of damage and detonates the weakened effect. And I am using Deadly Ground, which is a necrotic skill, but it does apply enhanced damage to us, which is the main reason I am using it. I have tinkered with a couple of other things in this slot, like Driving Kick, which is also absolutely fantastic. By the way, it never really gets old to kick people off the map, and just like booting them in the face with your feet is just fun in general. So Driving Kick is also fantastic there. Or you could run something else that you might want to run, or one of the other fire abilities. That's entirely up to you, but I do prefer the extra enhanced damage because we are in such a defense focus with the champion setup that little bit of extra damage bump is always beneficial. So let's talk about the skills. Now, as always, we won't cover every single skill. I'll just call out the main ones. I want to start with Enduring Rage. Your rage no longer decays below 50%, allowing you to sustain it between fights. This is specifically because of a helmet that we're using, which we'll touch on in the gear section. Heavy Armor Mastery is great here as well because it's giving you that plus 20% to your defense. And then you want to grab the Fire Resolve, which is the first of these perfect defense skills. So when you perfect defend, you will gain flaming weapons, and it does last longer. Now, on the other side of the tree, there is another flaming weapon skill that increases the damage of flaming weapons, which you do want to make your way over and get once you do have the necessary points. Wouldn't worry about that until you're much higher level though. Otherwise, progress towards the champion line and grab the Unbroken Finale. This will change your final attack into a shield attack if you use a heavy attack at the end of your attack chains. This attack will knock enemies back very far, which is quite fantastic if you're trying to spread enemies out, knock enemies off the cliff, all that good stuff. Now, as you unlock the specialization, you hit level 30 and you can either go Inspiring Guard or Reverb. I would go Reverb first because you do get extra damage output from that, and the passives in that line increasing your burning damage based on your rage, as well as burning being applied to targets around you, is more beneficial than the other line, but they are both fantastic, especially once you have them both and you're going to get all of these effects triggering just off a single perfect defense, which is the way you want to start most of these combat encounters, is by perfect defending. But in the skills, otherwise, there isn't specifically anything to call out. You want to make sure you're just grabbing all of those lesser passives that are buffing those abilities, grabbing anything that's increasing your affliction damage for burning, your burning damage, all that good stuff. There's nothing too critical that I didn't want to call out, but there is a few things in gear that I do want to call out. I am using the Spellblade Longsword, so you will gain flaming weapons on kills with this weapon. Another way to gain flaming weapons. Half of your fire resistance is added as damage to your flaming weapon. This synergizes with the champion's brilliant regalia, the armor that we're wearing, which is a heavy armor. This not only gives you a plus 25% to fire resistance and then plus 5 max fire resistance, but also I have put this enchant on it to give me additional fire resistance, so flaming weapons does even more damage because of the way that's going to trigger. And then the shield we are using is the Fade Touched Bulwark, which is a unique shield that on perfect defense, nearby enemies get pulled towards you, plus all of those effects that we just talked about with skills will trigger as well. I have been hunting through my footage and I cannot for the life of me find where I got this shield from, this unique shield. If you do know, please put it in the comments. I'll pin your comment if you do have an answer exactly where you get this shield. I'm sorry, I literally can't find it. I have so many files for Dragon Age and I could not find where I got this shield from. Emberborn Shard is the great axe that we are using here for that affliction damage plus the burning benefits that it does give us as well. Now, for the most part here, you're not really going to be switching to that two-handed weapon. You do get some benefits here by applying the burning status effect and then switching over to this weapon. But for the most part, we're really just going to be using that shield because of the benefits you get from perfect defending with the shield. But a lot of those champion effects do still apply if you perfect defend when you've got the Great Axe out. And then the Mage Bane is the unique helm that we are using here, which is fantastic for this build. So this reduces your rage generation significantly. However, all of your abilities now have a 60-second cooldown, but no rage cost. And your damage is increased by plus 1% for every 2 rage. So what this will mean is the higher your rage, which will never go down unless it just has that normal decay rate, you'll be gaining damage the higher this is. This is also a heavy armor, so it fits perfectly with the heavy armor set that we are using for the heavy armor mastery. It helps alleviate some of those issues by the way we're set up here with the lower amount of damage that we are dealing. And this is why we're using that passive as well. So our rage never drops below 50%. So we're always going to have at least part of that damage increase active, and then very quickly we can gain rage in combat as well. This helmet does come from the champion fight in the Hossberg wetlands. After you've beaten the champion, there's a unique chest there that will give you the Mage Bane helmet. Now, until you have done that, I would recommend to run the Stinging Blow, which is fantastic for flaming weapons. It has a lot of benefits for that. Both of these helms are fantastic, but either of those options is what I would run. The armor we have already touched on, and then just a quick look through our amulets. I am just using the control ability damage amulet here. The Andraste's Will Ring, which you get from the champion fight in the Crossroads, is fantastic for all those juicy burning stack. The utility belt here, I'm using the one that has time dilation, plus because of the rage generation it gives us, that helps with the helm. But time dilation is great here because we're going to be parrying a lot. So if you are struggling with some of that, it can help because of that time slowing effect, to make sure you're landing those parries when you do need them. And my last ring here is the Unburnable Band, which gives me burning damage increases across the board. Something to note here is that there is a really fantastic ring that gives fire damage that you can see the legendary version here, Warden's Signet, that I have. Something to note is that our weapon is doing physical damage. It's not actually doing fire damage here. While this ring is good, it's not going to get the same amount of benefits if you were using, say, it's like solely fire damage weapon, or you're converting all your damage into fire, something like that. So there's a lot of different options that you could run in terms of rings, but this is the options that I chose to land with. And then the companion pairings here. I really like Nev because she can freeze enemies, which is perfect if you're pulling enemies in towards you, then detonating those effects, and she freezes them all in this nice little circle that you can then apply burning stacks and just like smash in the face with. Now, she can also auto apply the weakened status with the glacial pace skill that she has. This is great because then we could detonate it with Blightbane, which we'll be doing quite regularly, and because then she can auto apply it every 60 seconds when you've got Blightbane up, because it no longer costs 2 like rage pips, it only is that 60-second cooldown now. You can regularly pump that. And then for your rogue, either Harding or Lucanus is fine. I do tend to lean Lucanus in this build because he can automatically apply enhanced damage, which is beneficial, but either of those is fantastic just so you can complete that holy trinity of being able to detonate and apply all of the different effects. But Davron and Tash both have fantastic synergies with fire damage, so you could technically run either of those as well. That's entirely up to you. A couple of tips for this warrior champion build to close us out here. Something to note is that this is a burning build, not a fire damage build. So we're using flaming weapons and burning here. We're not necessarily stacking fire damage specifically. So just think about that when you're looking for various gear and like how you're going to actually set your stuff up, is that it's all about that burning and for flaming weapons rather than fire damage. It can be a little bit confusing, but both are fine here. Like if you're using a fire-based weapon, totally fine, doesn't matter. The Grey Warden and the Lords of Fortune vendors are both fantastic if you're looking for gear for this build, to level those up and go and buy gear from them, because the Grey Wardens obviously have a lot of synergies with this. Now, something else to point out, if you are struggling with the parry timings, go into your settings, in your gameplay settings, and then in the advanced combat settings, you can change how your timings for the parries are triggered. Either you can change this to forgiving or balanced or whatever works for you, so you can actually make sure you're getting those timings, because the real focus of this build is making sure you're getting those perfect defense timings, and also getting used to the habit of trying to perfect defend everything rather than dodge, because once you've got that option that you can actually perfect defend, like those heavy red hits, you can just perfect defend everything and get those buffs from that rather than trying to dodge. It's a little hard to get into that rhythm, especially because I've played so much rogue that my brain just tries to dodge everything, but it's like, no, I've actually got to try and like deflect stuff. So just try and get in that mindset when you're playing this build. But let me know your thoughts on this build in the comments down below. Thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is NorZZa, and I hope you have a great day.